The stars looked different from the observation deck of the Galactic Concord vessel, Peaceful Envoy. Ambassador Krelthar of the Vexari stood with his forearms clasped behind his back, his iridescent skin reflecting the light of the unfamiliar yellow sun ahead. This solar system had been monitored for decades, but only recently had the signals from the third planet become too numerous and complex to ignore. Ambassador, we will reach Earth orbit in approximately 6 hours, said the ship's navigator, a tall, willowy being with pale blue skin. Krelthar nodded. Alert the diplomatic team. I want Dr. Traziel ready for first contact protocols. As the navigator left, Krelthar turned to the data screens displaying information about the species they were about to meet. Humans. Such a simple name for what appeared to be a remarkably complex species. Their progress from basic tools to space exploration had occurred at a pace that alarmed many members of the Concord Council. Reviewing the humans again? Dr. Traziel entered the observation deck, her specialized sensory appendages twitching with excitement. As the mission's xenobiologist, she had spent years studying the transmissions from Earth. They concern me, Krelthar admitted. Their history is filled with conflict. Their entertainment glorifies violence. Even their greatest technological advances seem to emerge from warfare. Dr. Traziel moved to stand beside him. That's what makes them fascinating. No other species we've encountered has advanced so quickly while spending so much energy fighting themselves. The Peaceful Envoy continued its approach to Earth, carefully, monitored by human defense systems. The first detection of the alien vessel had triggered global alerts, but the calm, peaceful messages sent ahead had prevented panic. Now the Earth Space Defense Force awaited their arrival, led by Captain Susan Miller aboard the ESD Horizon. Any change in the alien vessel's approach? Susan asked her sensor officer. No, Captain. They maintain the exact course and speed they transmitted. All weapon systems appear inactive just as they claimed. Susan nodded. It was hard to believe this was happening during her command. First contact with an alien species. Everything humanity had speculated about for centuries was about to be confirmed. Captain, we're receiving a new transmission from the alien vessel, said Communications Officer Jack Nelson. They're requesting permission to dock with our ship rather than proceeding directly to Earth. They say it's standard first contact. Protocol. Susan considered this. It made sense. A neutral meeting ground before taking aliens to Earth itself. Grant permission. Alert Lieutenant Grayson and his security team to prepare for the diplomatic reception. Lieutenant Alan Grayson checked his sidearm out of habit, then secured it in its holster. His team of 6 stood at attention in the docking bay, their uniforms crisp and their expressions professional despite the historic nature of the moment. Remember, Grayson told them, no sudden movements, no reaching for weapons unless I give the direct order. These beings have traveled across space to meet us peacefully. Let's not start an interstellar incident. The docking procedure went smoothly. Engineers on both vessels had worked out the compatibility issues in advance. When the airlock doors finally opened, the humans got their first look at members of the Galactic Concord. Ambassador Krelthar led the delegation. His four-armed, slender form stood just over 7 feet tall. Behind him came Dr. Traziel, whose body resembled an upright centipede with dozens of small, precise appendages. 3 other aliens of different species followed, each more strange and wonderful than the last. Captain Susan stepped forward. On behalf of Earth and humanity, I welcome you to the ESD Horizon. I am Captain Susan Miller. Krelthar made a fluid gesture with his upper right arm. I am Ambassador Krelthar of the Vexari, representing the Galactic Concord, a federation of 17 sapient species dedicated to peace and mutual advancement. The formal introductions continued, with each alien delegate greeting the human officers. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Then came a moment that would later be analyzed countless times by both species. One of the alien delegates, a being covered in short blue fur, made a sudden movement, reaching into a pouch at its side. In that split second, Lieutenant Grayson's hand moved to his sidearm. He didn't draw it. He merely positioned himself to do so if needed. The movement was so fast, so instinctive, that most of the humans didn't even notice it. But the aliens did. Dr. Traziel's sensory appendages flared with alarm. The blue-furred delegate froze, its 6 eyes widening. "My apologies," the alien said quickly, slowly removing a translation device from the pouch. "I merely wished to adjust my translator." The moment passed. Captain Susan, who had noticed Grayson's reaction, gave him a subtle nod of approval for his restraint. The initial greetings concluded, and the delegation moved to the ship's conference room for the first official meeting between humanity and the Galactic Concord. As they walked, Dr. Traziel activated her bioscanner, a small device disguised as an ornament on her body. The readings it displayed on her personal viewer made her upper appendages twitch involuntarily. The conference room was prepared with seating modified to accommodate the various alien physiologies. Captain Susan sat across from Ambassador Krelthar, with officers and delegates arranged on either side. "We have many questions," Susan began. "Humanity has wondered about life beyond our world for generations." "As have we wondered about you," Krelthar replied. "Your world has been of interest to us since we first detected your early radio transmissions. Your technological progress has been remarkable." "Thank you," Susan said, though she noticed a strange tone in the translated words. "We're a curious species." The meeting continued for 2 hours, covering basic information about both sides. The humans explained Earth's nations, governmental systems, and broad history. The aliens described the Galactic Concord, its founding, principles, and the diversity of worlds under its protection. Throughout the exchange, Dr. Traziel continued her scans, growing increasingly disturbed by what she was seeing. The human nervous system, muscle density, reaction time, pain tolerance, all far beyond what should be possible for a naturally evolved species at their technological level. When the meeting concluded, Captain Susan invited the delegation to tour the ship. As they moved through the corridors, Lieutenant Grayson walked slightly behind the group, alert for any issues. "Your security officer," Dr. Traziel said to Susan. "He moved with exceptional speed earlier. Is that common among humans?" "Alan, he's well trained but not unusual by our standards," Susan replied. "All our security personnel have similar capabilities." This answer seemed to trouble the alien scientist deeply. Later, as the alien delegation prepared to return to their vessel with plans for a larger diplomatic meeting on Earth the next day, Dr. Traziel pulled Ambassador Krelthar aside. "We must speak privately," she whispered, her translator set to a frequency only the ambassador could hear. Once they were alone in a small chamber on their ship, Dr. Traziel displayed her findings. "These humans," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "they're unlike anything we've encountered. Their bodies are literally built for conflict in ways that defy natural evolution. Their muscle fiber density, bone structure, adrenal response, it's as if they were designed for warfare." Krelthar studied the data with growing concern. "Are you suggesting—" "I need more samples, more data," Dr. Traziel said quickly. "But, Ambassador, if I'm right, we may have just made contact with the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and they don't even seem to know it." The next morning, Captain Susan Miller led a larger Earth delegation to meet with the aliens on the surface. They chose a military base outside of Denver as the meeting site, a decision that Ambassador Krelthar found concerning but accepted. The base was secure, isolated, and away from civilian populations. Logical reasons, but the fact that humans defaulted to a military installation spoke volumes. Dr. Traziel had barely slept. She spent the night analyzing her initial readings of human physiology, comparing them to every known species in the Concord database. Nothing matched the unusual combination of traits she observed in humans. Their endurance, reaction time, and threat response systems were optimized beyond what natural evolution should produce. The Earth helicopter landed at the base, and Susan stepped out with her team. Ambassador Krelthar and 5 other alien representatives exited their shuttle nearby. Humans and aliens walked toward each other across the tarmac, 2 groups from vastly different worlds meeting under the bright Colorado sun. "Welcome to Earth," Susan said, extending her hand before remembering that not all species appreciated physical contact. She smoothly transitioned the gesture into a slight bow. Krelthar returned the bow. "We are honored to stand on your world," the base commander, a man with gray hair and a weathered face, stepped forward. "I'm Commander Frank Johnson. I'll be overseeing security during your visit." As they walked toward the main building, Dr. Traziel activated her scanners again, this time focusing on a wider range of humans. The results only confirmed her suspicions. Every human showed the same unusual biological markers. Inside, they were led to a large room with a circular table. Representatives from major Earth nations were already seated, along with scientists and military officers. The alien delegation took their positions across the table. "Before we begin formal discussions," Susan said, "Commander Johnson has suggested we give you a tour of our facilities to demonstrate our openness and build trust." Some of the aliens exchanged glances. In their experience, no species ever truly opened their military bases to outsiders. "We would be grateful," Krelthar said carefully. The tour began with standard areas: communication centers, living quarters, and research labs. But when they reached the training facilities, everything changed. Commander Johnson led them to an observation deck overlooking a large indoor arena. Below, two groups of soldiers engaged in combat training. They moved with incredible speed and precision, their bodies absorbing impacts that would cripple any conquered species. "This is just standard close-quarters combat training," Johnson explained casually. "Nothing special." Dr. Traziel's sensor appendages flared in alarm. What the humans considered nothing special was horrifying to watch. The soldiers fought, with controlled violence that seemed impossible to maintain without serious injury. "Are they not hurting each other?" asked one of the alien delegates, a small reptilian being named Shistor. Johnson laughed. "Oh, they'll have some bruises, maybe a sprained wrist or two, but this is light training. We save the serious stuff for special forces." The aliens fell silent, processing this information. If this was light training, what did serious look like? Next, they visited the base's medical facility where Dr. Olivia Bryant was eager to share human medical knowledge with the alien visitors. "We've made great strides in trauma care," Dr. Bryant explained, showing them various equipment. "A human can lose up to 40% of their blood volume and still survive with proper treatment. Our bodies are quite resilient." Dr. Traziel asked, "And without treatment? How much can a human endure?" "That varies," Dr. Bryant replied. "But humans have survived remarkable trauma. There are cases of individuals continuing to function with multiple gunshot wounds, severe burns, or even impalement." The alien scientist made notes on her device, her appendages trembling slightly. "What about your pain response?" she asked. "How do humans process pain signals?" "We can compartmentalize pain," Dr. Bryant said. "In survival situations, humans can effectively ignore severe pain through adrenaline and focus. Our military trains specifically to function through pain that would normally be incapacitating." With each new revelation, the aliens grew more disturbed. The humans, seemingly oblivious to how unusual their capabilities were, continued proudly showing their facilities. After the medical center, they visited the science division where Dr. Peter Wright, head of Earth's xenobiology department, waited to meet his alien counterparts. "This is incredible," he said, barely containing his excitement. "I've spent my career studying theoretical alien biology, and now I get to meet actual xenobiologists." Dr. Traziel found herself warming to the enthusiastic human scientist. He seemed genuinely curious rather than threatening. "Perhaps we could exchange some basic biological information," she suggested. "Nothing classified, of course." "Absolutely," Dr. Wright agreed. He pulled up displays showing human biological systems. "I'll start with the basics of human physiology." As he explained, human biology, Dr. Traziel and the other alien scientists became increasingly alarmed. Humans had redundant systems throughout their bodies. Their blood could clot rapidly to prevent blood loss. Their bones were remarkably dense yet flexible. Their digestive systems could process a wide variety of foods, including some mild toxins. And, "This is fascinating," Dr. Wright continued, unaware of the aliens' growing concern. Humans can actually become stronger when our muscles tear during exercise. We call it hypertrophy. Our bodies rebuild damaged muscle tissue to be stronger than before. Ambassador Krelthar exchanged glances with his team. A species that grew stronger from damage? It was unheard of. Later that day, they observed a cultural presentation where children from a local school performed for the visitors. The aliens watched as small humans enacted a play about Earth's history. And then the brave soldiers fought. For freedom, a child narrator said as others pretended to battle on stage. Dr. Traziel leaned toward Krelthar. Even their younglings simulate warfare. The ambassador nodded grimly. I've counted 17 mentions of war or battle in this short performance. When the official events ended for the day, the alien delegation returned to their ship. They gathered in the secure conference room, all speaking at once about what they had witnessed. Silence, Krelthar finally ordered. Dr. Traziel, share your findings. The xenobiologist displayed her data on the main screen. These humans are biological impossibilities. Their physical capabilities, redundant systems, and pain tolerance cannot be explained by natural evolution. They show signs of deliberate engineering. That's not possible, objected Xistor. They have no evidence of such advanced genetic technology. Because they didn't engineer themselves, Dr. Traziel replied. Something else did long ago. Look at these genetic markers. They contain mathematical sequences that simply don't occur in nature. How dangerous are they? Asked another delegate. Krelthar thought of the casual comment Commander Johnson had made earlier. Humans have fought 17 major wars just in the last century alone. Very dangerous, the ambassador said quietly. The entire species appears optimized for conflict, and they don't even realize it. Dr. Traziel looked at her readings again. Ambassador, I believe we need to report this to the Concord Council immediately. These humans weren't just shaped by a hostile environment. They were engineered for war. Ambassador Krelthar stood before the holographic projection of the Concord Council. 17 representatives from different worlds looked down at him with expressions ranging from disbelief to horror as he finished his report on humanity. These claims are extraordinary, said Elder Vox of the Meridian Worlds, his crystalline form shimmering with concern. You believe this species was artificially engineered? Dr. Traziel's evidence is compelling, Krelthar replied. We request permission to establish a research outpost on Mars to investigate further without alarming the humans. The council deliberated briefly before granting approval. Proceed with caution, Elder Vox warned. If these humans are indeed weapons, we must determine who created them and why before they spread beyond their solar system. 2 weeks later, a Concord science vessel arrived at Mars under the cover story of cultural exchange. The humans welcomed the additional alien visitors, seeing it as a sign of growing interstellar relations. Little did they know that beneath the Mars colony's main dome, the aliens were building a sophisticated laboratory dedicated to unraveling the mystery of human origins. Dr. Samantha Wilson sat in her office at the Global Archaeological Institute in Chicago, reviewing the strange data requests from the alien visitors. As head of the Ancient Civilizations Department, she had access to the classified databases the aliens were most interested in. They've requested every scrap of information on human evolution from 400,000 to 200,000 years ago. She murmured to herself. Every anomalous finding, every unexplained evolutionary jump. Samantha pulled up the visitor logs. The aliens had toured museums, research facilities, and even remote dig sites. Their questions always circled back to the same period, when Homo sapiens suddenly appeared in the fossil record with capabilities far beyond their predecessors. She picked up her phone and called her colleague, Dr. Kevin Barnes, a geneticist, specializing in human genome mapping. Kevin, it's Sam. I need your help with something odd. Can you meet me for coffee? An hour later, they sat in a quiet corner of a campus cafe. The aliens are digging into our evolutionary history with unusual focus, Samantha explained. They've requested access to the complete human genome legacy database. Kevin frowned. That's strange. What would they want with our genetic history? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Will you help me look into what they're searching for? Kevin nodded. I've been working on mapping some of the more unusual portions of our genome anyway. The non-coding regions that everyone used to, called junk DNA, have some bizarre patterns that don't make evolutionary sense. On Mars, Chief Investigator WarHFY led the Concord research team through a series of increasingly troubling discoveries. They had secretly obtained samples from ancient human remains at archaeological sites and were comparing them to modern human DNA. The change is too sudden, WarHFY told Dr. Trazil as they examined the holographic displays. There should be gradual mutations over hundreds of thousands of years, but instead, we see a massive restructuring approximately 300,000 years ago. And look at this, Dr. Trazil pointed to another display. These genetic sequences that enhance aggression, pain tolerance, and tribal instincts, they all contain the same mathematical pattern embedded within them. WarHFY's 6 eyes widened. A signature. Exactly, Dr. Trazil agreed. Whoever engineered humans, they signed their work. Back on Earth, Samantha and Kevin worked late into the night in Kevin's lab. They had been cross-referencing the alien data requests with unusual findings in archaeology and genetics. Look at this, Kevin said suddenly. The sections of DNA they're most interested in have a strange structure. It's almost like, what? Samantha leaned closer to the screen. Like encryption. Kevin typed rapidly, running the sequences through a different analysis program. These patterns shouldn't occur naturally. They're too perfect, too regular. On the screen, a complex geometric pattern emerged as the computer processed the DNA sequences. That's impossible, Samantha whispered. It looks like some kind of code. Kevin stared at the pattern. Sam, what if someone rewrote parts of our DNA? What if we were engineered? At that same moment on Mars, WarHFY made a breakthrough. I've cross-referenced the mathematical signature with the Concord Ancient Civilization database, he announced to the research team. There's a match. The room fell silent as he displayed the results. The signature in human DNA matched symbols, found in artifacts from a long-extinct civilization known as the progenitors, who had vanished millions of years before the Concord formed. The progenitors engineered humanity. Dr. Trazil could hardly believe it. But why? All historical records indicate they were a peaceful species dedicated to knowledge and exploration. Not at the end, said another researcher, pulling up ancient records. The final progenitor archives speak of a terrible war against a species called the Devourers. The progenitors were losing, their worlds falling one by one. WarHFY connected the pieces. They created humans as weapons, living weapons designed to fight when the progenitors could not. On Earth, Ambassador Krelthar received the urgent report from Mars. The evidence was now overwhelming. Humanity had not evolved naturally, but had been engineered by an ancient spacefaring civilization as biological weapons for a war that had ended millions of years ago. The ambassador faced a difficult decision. The Concord protocols were clear. Species designed as weapons were too dangerous to allow into the wider galaxy. Yet these humans had no knowledge of their origins or purpose. They were victims of ancient manipulation. As Krelthar contemplated his next move, Kevin and Samantha made their own discovery. Kevin had managed to partially decrypt the patterns in human DNA, revealing what appeared to be coordinates. These aren't random, Samantha said, plotting the coordinates on a star chart. This is a location in space. But that's over 50 light-years away, Kevin objected. How would ancient humans have coordinates to a star system they couldn't possibly have known existed? Unless someone put them there, Samantha replied. Kevin, I think we've found a message from whoever made us who we are. The Concord Council, upon receiving the full report from Mars, voted to implement containment protocols. A fleet of sterilization vessels was dispatched to the edge of the solar system as a contingency measure. Meanwhile, Samantha and Kevin decided to approach Captain Susan with their findings. They needed to warn humanity about what they had discovered and what the aliens might really be doing in the solar system. As these events unfolded, Dr. Trazil made one final, stunning discovery in the Mars laboratory. The progenitors hadn't just made humans aggressive and resilient. They had engineered them with the capacity to bond deeply with their allies, to sacrifice for their group, to cooperate in ways that made them even more effective in conflict. They didn't just make killers, she told Zorvax. They made warriors with a purpose, to protect what they care about at any cost. The stage was now set for a confrontation that would reveal to humanity the terrifying truth about their origins, and force the Galactic Conquered to decide whether humans were too dangerous to exist in the wider universe. Ambassador Krelthar's shuttle descended toward the United Nations headquarters in New York. He had made a difficult decision that went against the Conquered Council's vote. Instead of waiting for the sterilization fleet to arrive, he would warn humanity about their true origins and the danger they now faced. In her office at the Global Archaeological Institute, Samantha received an urgent call from Captain Susan. Dr. Wilson, we need you and Dr. Barnes at the UN immediately. The alien ambassador has requested an emergency meeting with Earth's leaders, and he specifically asked for you two to attend. Did he say why? Samantha asked, catching her breath. No, but he mentioned something about human origins. Your research must have caught their attention. 2 hours later, Samantha and Kevin sat in the Grand UN Assembly Hall alongside world leaders, military commanders, and top scientists. Captain Susan sat next to General Linda Morrison, the highest-ranking military officer involved in the alien contact program. Ambassador Krelthar entered with Dr. Traziel and Chief Investigator Zorvax. The room fell silent as the aliens took their places at the center of the chamber. People of Earth, Krelthar began, his voice solemn. I come before you today to reveal a truth that my team has discovered about your species. A truth that the Concord Council has deemed too dangerous to share with you. He nodded to Zorvax, who activated a holographic display showing DNA sequences alongside ancient symbols. Approximately 300,000 years ago, your species underwent a dramatic and sudden change. This change was not natural evolution. You were engineered by an ancient civilization that we call the progenitors. Murmurs filled the room. Samantha and Kevin exchanged glances, their own suspicions confirmed. The progenitors altered your DNA, enhancing your physical capabilities, your aggression, your pain tolerance, and your tribal instincts. They created a species optimized for warfare. General Morrison stood up. Are you saying we're weapons? That some ancient aliens made us to fight their battles? Yes, Dr. Traziel answered. Our evidence is conclusive. Your unique biological traits cannot be explained by natural evolution. You were designed to be the perfect warriors. The room erupted in shouting and questions. Secretary General Patrick Chen called for order. Why are you telling us this now? Chen asked when the room quieted. Krelthar's 4 hands clasped together in a gesture of regret. Because the Concord Council has voted to quarantine your solar system. They believe you are too dangerous to join the wider galactic community. They fear what humanity might become if they learn of their true purpose. And what happens if we resist this quarantine? General Morrison asked, her voice steady but cold. A fleet of sterilization vessels will arrive at the edge of your solar system in approximately 30 Earth days, Krelthar said. I have broken our protocols by warning you. The room fell into stunned silence. Kevin Barnes stood up. Ambassador, we've discovered something in our research that might be relevant. We found coordinates encoded in human DNA, pointing to a star system about 50 light-years from here. Zorvax's eyes widened. You decrypted the genetic signature? Impressive. We think it might lead to answers about who engineered us and why. Samantha added, if we could reach that location. Impossible, Zorvax interrupted. Your technology is not advanced enough for such a journey. But yours is, General Morrison said, her eyes narrowing. Ambassador, you said you broke protocols to warn us. Would you be willing to help us find the truth? Krelthar was silent, for a long moment. What do you propose? A joint expedition, Morrison replied. Your ship, our people, working together to follow these coordinates. If humans were created as weapons, don't we deserve to know who made us and why? The ambassador conferred briefly with his colleagues before responding. The Council would forbid this, but I believe it is the right course of action. We will help you. 3 days later, the peaceful envoy prepared for departure. Captain Susan Miller would represent Earth, along with Samantha, Kevin, and a small team of specialists. They would travel with Krelthar, Dr. Treziel, and Zorvax to the mysterious coordinates hidden in human DNA. As the ship left Earth's orbit, Samantha stared out at her home planet growing smaller in the viewport. "Do you think we'll find answers?" she asked Kevin, who stood beside her. "I hope so, but I'm more worried about what happens when the sterilization fleet arrives. If we don't find something useful, humanity could be facing extinction." The journey took 2 weeks at the alien ship's top speed. When they finally arrived at the coordinates, they found a yellow star with 7 planets. The 4th planet showed signs of ancient civilization. "There are ruins on the surface," Zorvax reported as they entered orbit, "and energy readings that shouldn't be possible from a dead world." They landed near the largest concentration of ruins, massive structures of an unknown black material that seemed to absorb light. The team donned environmental suits and ventured out onto the dusty surface. "These buildings are millions of years old," Samantha said in awe as they approached the central structure. "Yet they look almost new." Inside the main building, they found what appeared to be a control room. Strange symbols covered the walls, symbols that matched the patterns in human DNA. "This is definitely progenitor technology," Krelthar confirmed, "but it's more advanced than any ruins we've discovered before." Kevin approached a raised platform in the center of the room. As he stepped onto it, the platform began to glow with a soft, blue light. Symbols on the walls illuminated in sequence. "I think it's responding to his human DNA," Dr. Treziel said, scanning the reaction with her instruments. Suddenly, a holographic figure appeared above the platform, a tall, slender being with 6 limbs and an elongated head. "Genetic verification confirmed," the figure said in a language that somehow all of them could understand. "Activating final message of the Progenitor High Council." The hologram changed, showing a group of beings similar to the first. One stepped forward and began to speak. "If you are receiving this message, then our final creation has evolved as we hoped and has found its way back to its origins. We, the progenitors, once spanned 1,000 worlds. Now, we face extinction." The message continued, explaining how the progenitors had encountered a species they called the Devourers, beings that consumed all life and technology they encountered, spreading like a plague across the galaxy. "We tried diplomacy. We tried conventional warfare. Nothing stopped their advance. In our desperation, we created you, a species engineered not just for combat, but for survival at any cost. We took a promising species on a protected world and accelerated your evolution, embedding within you the perfect balance of aggression and cooperation, of individual strength and group loyalty." The hologram showed images of early humans being modified by progenitor technology, their DNA reshaped to create beings capable of surviving almost any hardship. "We have seeded this weapon on a protected world. When they reach the stars, they will be ready to finish our war." Captain Susan stepped forward. "But your war is over. The Devourers are gone." The hologram could not respond to questions, continuing its pre-recorded message. "To our creation, you were made for a purpose, but your destiny is your own. We embedded this star map in your genetic code, hoping you would one day find this place and understand your origins. The knowledge and technology in this facility is our legacy to you." As the message ended, panels in the walls slid open, revealing repositories of ancient technology and data storage devices. "They left all this for us," Kevin whispered. "Their knowledge, their technology. A terrible gift," Krelthar said gravely. "The Concord Council was right to fear humanity's potential. With this technology, you could become the most powerful species in the galaxy." Captain Susan turned to the ambassador. "Or we could choose a different path than the one we were designed for. We were engineered for war, but we've also built civilizations, created art, and reached for the stars. We're more than just weapons, Ambassador." Samantha picked up one of the data devices. "This is our history, our truth. We have a right to know it. and to decide what we do with it. As they gathered the progenitor legacy to take back to Earth, the team knew they faced an even greater challenge ahead. They had less than 2 weeks before the sterilization fleet would arrive at Earth. Somehow, they needed to convince the Galactic Concord that humanity, despite being engineered for war, deserved the chance to choose their own future. The peaceful envoy raced back toward Earth, pushing its engines beyond safe limits. On board, Captain Susan Miller and her team worked with the aliens to prepare their case for the Galactic Concord. They had only days before the sterilization fleet would reach Earth. "We need someone to speak directly to the Concord Council," Ambassador Krelthar said during their strategy meeting. "Someone who can make them understand that humanity deserves a chance despite your origins." "I'll go," Susan said without hesitation. "As a military officer, I represent exactly what they fear about humanity. If I can convince them we're more than weapons, it might change their minds." Dr. Trazil and Samantha worked together to analyze the progenitor technology they had recovered. The data devices contained incredible advances in medicine, energy production, and space travel, but they also held detailed records of how humans had been engineered. "They didn't just make us stronger and more aggressive," Samantha said as she studied the information. "They built in limits too, biological safeguards to keep us from becoming too dangerous." "What kind of safeguards?" Kevin asked, looking up from his own work. "Empathy," Samantha replied. "They enhanced our capacity to care for others, to form bonds, to protect our own. The same traits that make humans dangerous also give us the potential to be guardians rather than destroyers." When they reached Earth, they found the planet on high alert. The approaching Concord fleet had been detected at the edge of the solar system. World leaders had been informed of the situation, and military forces worldwide were preparing for a fight they couldn't possibly win. General Morrison met them at the landing site. "We've got 48 hours before the fleet enters weapons range. Tell me you found something useful out there." "We found the truth," Susan said. "And maybe a way to save Earth." A day later, a small shuttle left Earth carrying a diplomatic mission to the Concord fleet. Captain Susan led the team, which included Samantha, Kevin, and surprisingly, Ambassador Krelthar. The ambassador had chosen to stand with humanity against the Concord's decision. They were escorted to the flagship, where the Concord Council had assembled via hologram to witness the proceedings. Elder Vox of the Meridian Worlds looked down at them with his crystalline eyes reflecting cold light. "Ambassador Krelthar, you have violated council orders by warning the humans of our decision and by aiding them," Elder Vox stated. "Do you deny these actions?" "I do not," Krelthar replied. "I have come to believe that the council's decision is unjust. Humanity deserves to be judged by their actions, not their origins." "They were created as weapons," argued another council member, "a being of pure energy contained in a mechanical shell. Their entire biology is designed for warfare. They cannot escape their nature." Susan stepped forward. "With respect, we are more than our biology. Yes, we discovered that we were engineered for war by the progenitors, but they also gave us the capacity to choose a different path." She activated a data device displaying the genetic codes the progenitors had embedded in humanity. "They didn't just make us strong and aggressive. They gave us empathy, creativity, and the desire to protect. For every trait that makes us dangerous, they balanced it with one that could make us guardians." "Pretty words," said a third council member, "but your history speaks for itself. Warfare, violence, conquest, these define human civilization. We've made mistakes," Susan acknowledged. "Terrible ones. But we've also created art, music, literature. We've sacrificed for each other, built civilizations based on cooperation, and reached for the stars not to conquer, but to explore." Samantha stepped forward and displayed images of the progenitor ruins. "We found their legacy. They left us knowledge and technology, hoping we would one day understand our purpose. But they also left us a choice. The devourers the progenitors feared are gone," Kevin added. "The war we were created to fight is over. Now we can choose what we become." The council deliberated, their holographic forms flickering as they communicated, privately. Finally, Elder Vox spoke. "Your arguments are compelling but insufficient. Words alone cannot prove that a species engineered for war can overcome its nature. Just then, alarms sounded throughout the flagship. A tactical officer reported, "Unknown vessels approaching at high speed." On the display screens, dozens of Earth ships appeared, led by General Morrison's flagship. They had followed the diplomatic shuttle, prepared to fight for humanity's survival. "Stand down your forces," Elder Vox commanded Susan, "or this discussion is over." Susan looked at the display, then closed her eyes. She activated her communication device. "General Morrison, this is Captain Miller. Hold position. Do not engage. I repeat, do not engage." To everyone's surprise, the Earth fleet immediately stopped advancing. "You see," Susan said to the Council, "we were engineered with the capacity for violence, but also with the ability to choose peace. Even when facing extinction, we can control our nature. One act of restraint does not..." Elder Vox began. "Let me propose something," Krelthar interrupted. "A probationary period. Humanity agrees to limit its military expansion beyond their solar system. The conquered provides oversight and guidance. In return, humans share the progenitor knowledge they've recovered, which could benefit all species." "And if they violate the terms?" asked the energy being. "Then the quarantine can be reimposed," Krelthar replied. "But I believe they deserve the chance to prove what they can become." The Council withdrew again for private discussion. When they returned, Elder Vox announced their decision. "We will accept this proposal with additional safeguards. Monitoring stations will be established throughout the solar system. Any human ships leaving must carry Concord observers. These terms are non-negotiable." "We accept," Susan said, relief evident in her voice. 3 months later, Captain Susan stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Concord Embassy in Geneva. Beside her stood Ambassador Krelthar, watching as humans and aliens worked together to build a new future. "The first human-designed ship with progenitor technology launches next week," Susan told him. "It's a research vessel, not a warship." "A wise choice," Krelthar replied. "Many in the Conquered still fear what humanity might become." "They're right. To be cautious," Susan admitted. "We were made as weapons. That potential will always be part of us." "Yet you choose differently," Krelthar observed. "In the short time since we revealed your origins, your people have focused on medicine, environmental restoration, and peaceful exploration." "We were engineered for war," Susan said, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "But we've evolved beyond our programming. The progenitors made us to fight, but they also gave us the ability to protect." In a laboratory nearby, Samantha and Kevin worked with scientists from a dozen alien species, studying the progenitor legacy together. "We've isolated the gene sequences responsible for human aggression," an alien researcher reported. "We could potentially modify them, reduce the violent tendencies in future generations." Samantha considered this. "We could. But would we still be human without the fire that drives us? Maybe the answer isn't to change who we are, but to choose how we use our nature." Later that evening, Ambassador Krelthar sent his final report to the Conquered Council before his reassignment. His words were simple, but profound. "The humans have a saying. The true measure of a being is not how they were created, but what they choose to become. These humans, engineered as weapons, now choose to be shields. They use their strength not to dominate, but to protect. Perhaps in this lies the true legacy of the progenitors. Not living weapons, but living guardians for a galaxy that will always face new threats. The terrifying truth of humanity's origins has become something unexpected, a source of hope." As the first joint human-alien expedition prepared to launch into deep space, humanity looked to the stars not as conquerors or destroyers, but as protectors. They carried with them the knowledge of who made them, why they were made, and most importantly, the freedom to choose what they would become.